Narrative economics, as I define it, is the study of popular narratives, stories with morals that go viral. Some narratives go viral because they contain real truth and knowledge and are useful. I'm more concerned with the other kinds of narratives, which are more story quality and that travel from person to person. They have a high contagion rate. Changes in public thinking are revealed by them, and changes in public thinking are important causes of major economic events. I've been thinking about narrative economics ever since I was a teenager. It started out when I was an undergrad at the University of Michigan, and I took a history course, and I got a good insight from the history course about why we had the Great Depression.
So first of all, let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
People think of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the president, saying, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself, so that the Depression is described as some kind of panic. There were other narratives during the Great Depression that I think were very important. One of them was a frugality narrative. Steinbeck's book, The Grapes of Wrath, was a description of life in the Great Depression, sympathetic to the suffering of that time. Economists don't like to talk about the meaning of life, but it's in the Depression. In other words, people had a different sense of the meaning. People thought that we'd been living too high in the 1920s and were show-offs.
Much of America concentrates on life's simple pleasures, booze, jazz, and razzmatazz.
They came back to religion, to modesty in fashion, and sympathy for people who were disadvantaged.
The old mill stayed shut. The years had brought a new method, a new machine. Automatic, high speed, powerful, accurate, never gets tired, never gets sick.
High-speed machinery goes in. Men like you and me go out.
Another narrative of the Great Depression was a technological unemployment narrative. Machines were now replacing jobs, and the jobs would never be back. That scared people into cutting back, just as the frugality narrative also encouraged them to cut back their consumption.
Section 5, speed her up, fall 1.
Modern Times was a Depression-era movie starring Charlie Chaplin that described the effects of automation. The workers are told in this factory, semi-automated factory, that they have decided to automate their lunch to speed things up. So the worker is asked to sit down by a lunch machine that will feed him his lunch at high speed. It was a hilarious scene, but it indicated the dehumanization that's caused by robots that are taking over. But basically, the narrative about machines replacing jobs goes back hundreds of years, even thousands of years. Aristotle talked about it. But it has become stronger and stronger, and it remains very strong today in the 21st century. Artificial intelligence is fundamentally scary because it replaces us. What defines us more than our brain? We have people who used to think that they were safe from being replaced because they had developed high cognitive skills. But we have machines that are doing things like playing chess better than people can. So who are we anymore? We tend to fashion stories about ourselves that are self-congratulating. But the problem is, we have machines that are doing so much better than you could ever do. It creates a sort of sense of meaninglessness in life. I think it can have the effect of causing an economic recession or depression.
We have witnessed a startling drop in the stock market. As the housing market has declined, banks holding assets related to home mortgages have suffered serious losses. As a result of these losses, many banks lack the capital or the confidence in each other to make new loans. In turn, our system of credit is frozen.
The housing crisis of 2007 to 2009 in the U.S. and in other countries as well was the following of a boom in home prices that was unprecedented in history. It wasn't interest rates. It wasn't building costs going up. It wasn't the population surge. None of those things happened. So what did happen?
So many people are fighting for their American dream, for the Las Vegas dream, because in so many ways, Felicitas and Francisco have lived the American dream. Their story is not one of great wealth or great privilege. Instead, it embodies the steady pursuits of simple dreams through hard work that has built this country from the bottom up. Finally, 3 years ago, they were able to reach that destination in their pursuit of the American dream. After so much hard work, Felicitas and Francisco were able to move into a home of their own.
In my book, I describe that as the result of a narrative that began about home purchases, about home ownership, about the American dream. The American dream was coined by James Truslow Adams in a book he wrote in 1931 called The Epic of America. Adams hinted at a kind of American philosophy that it's actually good for the country if you buy a big house and a big, nice, fancy new car, because that won't so much invite envy as it will be an inspiration to others. They'll say, well, if he or she did it, I can do it too. And that's what makes America great. So it's a patriotic statement. But the narrative included an idea that home prices are going to go way up, and that there's a lot of smart people who are not stopping with just one house. They buy 2 houses or maybe 3 houses, and they're making a bonanza. And it collapsed when the narrative changed, when people started talking about housing bubble and started talking about the foolishness of the investors in it. The Great Recession that followed was substantially caused by a changing narrative about housing. Why is narrative economics important? People live their lives as fulfilling a story, and it changes motivation in fundamental ways. Human thinking has to be studied if we are going to understand economic fluctuations. We have to understand how people change their thinking through time.